Good evening. There are now 5 days left until the general strike against Congress because they are dropping the ball. They are not looking out for the American people. And we can do better by crowdsourcing functional government, by coming together with one specific set of legislative demands across all 470 congressional districts and pitting incumbents against challengers and saying, look, get this done. Put this on the president's desk before the election, and you can earn our votes. Refuse, and we can replace you. We need to remind ourselves and remind Congress that the Constitution is a framework for government, and it starts off with a list of duties. So I'd like to recite the preamble to the Constitution as a reminder of America's mission statement. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Those are our 5 duties. Those are the goals that Americans have. Those are our duties both individually and as a nation. And so far, over the last 16 days of these live streams, we have covered our first duty, establish justice, and how we can institute major criminal justice reform in the blueprint for a better America. We've covered ensure domestic tranquility with a truce on guns and abortion. We've covered provide for the common defense and ending the endless wars. And then so now we're working on promoting the general welfare. And tonight, we're going to talk more about what exactly that means to promote the general welfare. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer those or any other questions about what's in the blueprint so far. All right, so let's recap. What exactly does promoting the general welfare mean? Welfare has a specific meaning, means health, happiness, prosperity, well-being. That's what Congress is supposed to do. Now, some people like to say that, well, the preamble is just sort of advisory. It doesn't mean that Congress actually has to promote the general welfare. And those people are incorrect. The Constitution is very clear in Article 1, Section 8. Let's see if I can find this here. And Article 1, Section 8, it says that Congress shall, hope you can read that. This is the General Welfare Clause. The Congress shall have the power to provide for the general welfare of the United States. And again, some people say, oh, well, maybe that's just enabling. They have the power to do it, but they don't have to do it. Well, read the rest of this. They have the power to pay the debts. Clearly, this is not an optional thing. Congress is obligated to pay the debts of the United States. They have the power, shall have the power to provide for the common defense. Again, clearly not an optional thing. Congress has to do these things. Congress has a duty specifically to provide for the general welfare. And so how are we doing as far as providing for the health, happiness, and prosperity of Americans? And the answer is not that great. A lot of Americans are hurting. A lot of people are struggling. People are unhappy. Our health system isn't that good. We've got a lot of issues, and so I'm going to talk about those 3 things tonight, about how we're doing and how we can do better. Move that over here, I can see it. All right. All right. So, health. The health of the United States. Well, as it turns out, poverty is a big driver of healthcare usage. There's a study from Dr. Buzz Cooper did a study in Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee healthcare region, and he found that people who lived in the poorest zip codes used like 35% more healthcare than the people in the more affluent zip codes. Poverty it drives a lot of chronic diseases. And so these things are all interconnected. As you know, part of the Blueprint for a Better America: end poverty, end mass incarceration, end the endless wars. Ending poverty will alleviate a lot of these things, will promote health, happiness, and prosperity. And so one of the biggest ways that we can see how poverty drives healthcare usage is in our life expectancy. Someone who lives in the lower in the poverty, who lives in poverty has a life expectancy of about 15 years shorter than someone who lives at the top of the economic ladder. And these disparities show up in a number of places. Now, recently, the Census Bureau kicked out a chart of how life expectancy has changed over the last, this goes back to 2000. I'm going to try and zoom in on this a little bit. And so you can see that it's kind of going up and up slightly. And then our average peaked in 2019, and then 2020 came down. And there's two primary reasons for this. One, of course, was the COVID-19 pandemic. That was responsible for a lot of it. But the corresponding part was an increase in drug overdoses. That for these last 2 years, we've had 100,000 Americans up about 35% from what we had in previous years, and it had been escalating as well. But we've had a big increase in the number of people who have been dying young as a result of illegal drugs that were of unknown toxicity and led to fatal overdoses. So that's the general chart, but let's look at life expectancy at birth for different races. And so you can see that of our different races here, we've got different life expectancies. And these strongly correlate to the percentage of the population that is living in poverty. For American Indian or Alaskan Natives, they have the highest rate of poverty. About 1 in 4 people in this category live in poverty, and they have the lowest lifespan, shortest average lifespan, life expectancy, I should say. You can see how it has fallen quite dramatically over the last 2 years. Next up, we've got the Blacks have about 1 in 6. 1 in 6 Black people is living in poverty. Then we've got Hispanics, and it's about 1 in 5 that are living in poverty. And so the life expectancy keeps going up. And then when we get to the Asian population, it's about 1 in 12. Only 1 in 12 Asians live in poverty, and they have the longest life expectancy of any group. Poverty leads to a lot of problems and definitely has a big impact on the health of the United States. And so the way that we can address this, the way that we can promote health, happiness, and prosperity includes ending poverty with a universal basic income. Now, even with the healthcare spending that we do have, we are not getting a good deal as a nation. We are spending about 3 times as much as other developed countries, and that's per capita. So on average, every man, woman, child is spending we are spending $11,072. This was in, I believe this is a chart from 2020. Yes, July 2020. And so we are far above. The next highest is Switzerland. We're over 3,200 and about $3,300 higher than Switzerland, higher than Germany, Canada, France, all of these countries that spend lower. And many of them, if not most of them, have longer life expectancies. You can see the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, that their average of spending is around $4,000 per capita. We're spending almost 3 times as that and getting worse results. So clearly something is wrong with what we're doing. We are not getting the most bang for our buck. And so introducing a public option for health insurance so that people can buy an insurance policy from a nonprofit government entity, which has economies of scale, will give us an opportunity not just to offer another plan that hopefully would bring individual costs down, but also to keep the for-profit companies honest, that when they try and raise their rates year after year after year, that we would having to compete with a government plan would help keep them in line. This is sort of what happened when the Tennessee Valley Authority was developed and a series of dams were put into place. Electricity was generated and sold. And one of the purposes of that was to keep the other electric companies in that area, keep them honest by forcing them to compete, and not just be able to jack their rates up. Another aspect of this that goes to both health and happiness is the paid family leave. And as I mentioned before, the United States is one of only just a handful, like three or five countries on this planet that doesn't require paid maternity leave, so that when a mother gives birth, she's ensured that she will be able to spend time with her child, her newborn, without losing her job, and still have some income when she takes that time. And many countries have very generous plans. Even countries like India and North Korea have 6 months. But the Blueprint for a Better America has 18 weeks. Doesn't put us at the bottom, but it's a big, big improvement from where we are now, which is 0. And so all of these things will help improve health. Just those 18 weeks of paid family leave could save the lives of 9,000 newborns a year. Children right now that are dying before they reach their first birthday. And there's just being able to spend more time with their mothers will increase the odds that they survive to see that first birthday. So these are some of the ways that the Blueprint for a Better America will improve America's health. What about happiness? Now, happiness is a little more intangible, but as it turns out, that we are actually measuring this. According to CNN, let's see, I want to show you the headline. So, according to CNN, American happiness has hit a record low this year, going back all the way back to 1972. Where is it on here? I don't know, somewhere in the story. Oh, yeah. They've been asking since 1972. So 50 years. We are at a 50-year low for happiness. Congress is obviously failing to meet their constitutional duty to promote health, happiness, and prosperity. Now, one of the things that gets people riled up, gets people unhappy, is partisan politics and the divisiveness, the hatefulness, the anger, the bitterness that they bring, because the political parties thrive on that. They thrive on keeping us divided and keeping us pitted against each other, so we fight and so we pick a side, Republican or Democrat. That's what they specialize in, is trying to drive people away from one side or another, so that they're forced to choose the lesser of two evils. And so the American Union offers a better model, refusing to pick sides, refusing to play that lesser of two evils game, and instead coming together around solutions. We can solve, we can address, we can deal with so many problems in America by adopting the blueprint for a better America: end poverty, end mass incarceration, and the endless wars. When 3.5% of Americans demand that Congress enact it before the midterm elections, we will have the political leverage to control the balance of power in Washington, D.C. There's no reason why these problems can't be solved. We're lacking the political will. Congress makes a lot of money by allowing a lot of these problems to fester. Going back to health, we've talked about the prescription drugs and how the Inflation Reduction Act allows, in 3 years in the future, will allow Medicare Part D to negotiate for a few prescription drugs. And in the meantime, the pharmaceutical companies are going to rake in an extra $45 billion a year over what we could be paying for prescription drugs, if we actually negotiated from a position of strength, where and negotiated with, over economies of scale. Yeah, we have the ability to do these things, but pharmaceutical companies raised $100 million, or $187,000 per member of Congress, to persuade them not to enact these things that would cost them tens of billions of dollars of profit each year. And so the American Union is a way of changing those incentives, because members of Congress are very enthusiastic about being reelected. Candidates for Congress are enthusiastic about being elected. It's very important to them. So great. We, as a block of swing voters, have something that they want, and we can make a very clear set of demands. This is what we want in exchange for our votes: end poverty, end mass incarceration, and end the endless wars. There's a lot of, going back to happiness, there's a lot of feeling of futility. According to the same CNN story, one third of Americans, let me make sure I get the quote right, when it comes to the midterm elections, nearly a third of voters say it doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't matter. That's what they say. It doesn't matter who wins. There's a sense of futility. Go out and vote is what the message is, but it doesn't matter who wins. We can change that. And if just 10% of these people who say it doesn't matter who wins come together with the American Union to say it doesn't matter who wins, what matters is policy. Policy is more important than partisan politics. Then these disgruntled voters, we can have the leverage to force changes to policy, because that feeling of futility that the inability to change the system doesn't help anyone's happiness. And this works on Congress too. Congress knows that it has a terrible reputation, that for so many years now, their popularity, their approval rating hovers around 20%. From 2010 to 2020, it only bumped up to 30% one time. And that was when they passed the CARES Act at the start of the pandemic. It bumped up to 31%, and then did back down again. But when people saw Congress actually getting something done, then only 70% of people disapproved of the job that they were doing. So this reputation that Congress has sort of precedes them, and newly elected congressmen who get elected, they've already got this built-in expectation that the system is broken, that everyone's telling them that they can't do anything about it, that they can't change policy, that nothing can be done. And so even members of Congress give into this futility, and they just sort of recognize that the system is broken and there's not much they can do about it. But there is something we can do about it, and that is moving away from the system of adversarial democracy that we have right now, where again, Republicans and Democrats get us to fight. They fight against each other, they argue, they commit to undoing whatever the other party is doing, and they battle back and forth just for the sake of arguing. That team spirit, the bipartisanship that used to exist in Congress has sort of faded away, especially in the last 20, 30 years. And so adversarial democracy is not working for America. It is not delivering on our constitutional duties. It is not promoting health, happiness, and prosperity. And so the American Union offers a better model of collaborative democracy, of American citizens coming together and saying, what are the problems we want to see solved? What are the issues that are facing America that can be addressed? And how can we address them? And not with some nebulous ideas of saying, this would be nice, or we should do this or whatever, but actually writing down a very specific legislative package to give to Congress to say, get this done in exchange for votes. And making this a collaborative process, not offering it to one party or the other, but instead to all the incumbents. Get this done before the election, and we can reelect you. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Just solve some problems already. It's all written down. Just put it on the president's desk, and everybody wins. We don't have to have a hateful, polarizing election. We can come out of the pandemic solving these problems, moving into America 4.0, and reinventing ourselves as a nation that really gets back to our constitutional duties, that we end mass incarceration and establish justice. We provide for the common defense, but not be the world's policeman. We get back to what the framers intended. We promote the general welfare, the health, happiness, and prosperity. We can do these things. We have the ability, but our system isn't set up in a way that encourages these kind of things. Because if one side promotes it or proposes it, the other side likes to fight against it. And so they just clash. Collaborative democracy, a union of swing voters who are willing to put policy above partisan politics, can change the dynamic and address that feeling of futility that people have about the political system. You don't have to fight City Hall. You have to persuade City Hall that the way that politicians can get reelected is by adopting these solutions for America. I guess I want to say too that this survey, this happiness survey, only goes back to 1972. But obviously, Americans have had feelings about happiness for a long, long time. And the scenarios, the situations that we're dealing with today, like the great amount of wealth inequality that we have in America, we've dealt with these before. We dealt with this back in the 1930s and the Great Depression. And back in the 1930s, once again, we had people who were frustrated, who gave up and were starting to snap. We had a series of mass shootings. They called them rampage shootings back in those days, 80 years ago. And so we're dealing with these same problems again, and many of the causes are the same. And so we can address them. We can fix them. We can move our country forward and bring our country together by unionizing as voters and forcing Congress to enact legislative solutions in exchange for our votes, or replacing them with congressmen who will. Another aspect of happiness is the number of families that have been broken up because of our system of mass incarceration. There's more than 5 million children in this country who have a parent who's been incarcerated. And this is not good. This is the best scenario for kids, is growing up with two loving parents that are there for them, not having parents, a parent that is locked up. There was a study recently that found, again, that just having an incarcerated family member, not necessarily a parent, could be a son, daughter, other member of the family that's incarcerated, has an impact on people's life expectancy. That stress of having to deal with that. So ending mass incarceration will also improve the health and happiness and prosperity. Another study, a Villanova University study a while back, found that families that had an incarcerated parent were 40% more likely to be living in poverty. So ending mass incarceration will also help promote health, happiness, and prosperity in America, because this prosperity is a problem when we've got 1 in 9 Americans, about 37 million Americans that are living in poverty, and kids, about 1 in 6 children is living in poverty, not because of anything that they did, not because they're not working hard enough or need to go find a job, but just as a result of the birth lottery. Whatever family they happen to be chosen, they happen to end up with when they were born, has a big impact on their life. And when kids grow up in poverty, it creates a lifetime of costs. It can be childhood trauma. And so society bears the cost of a lot of these things. And we get more bang for our buck when it comes to government spending if we would just end childhood poverty and make sure that no child grows up in poverty. Again, we don't expect them to go get jobs and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We expect them to go to school, learn, become a responsible, productive adult. But poverty hinders all of those things. And so allowing, through the policy choices that America has made, like allowing that expanded child tax credit to expire at the beginning of this year, which once again, Congress dropped the ball and let 3 million kids fall back into poverty. These kind of things bear a big cost to the rest of society. There's another point I was going to make, and I got off track there and I lost it. So childhood poverty can be ended, should be ended. It's a policy choice that we can fix. There's no reason why in the richest country in the world we should allow it to continue to exist. It's wrong and we can do better. Now, there's always, when I say we can end poverty, there's always going to be relative poverty, right? There's going to be middle-class people, and then there's going to be the Bill Gates and Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musks with billions and billions and billions of dollars. There's always going to be this relative poverty. But what we can do is we can end absolute poverty. We can cut those lowest rungs off the economic ladder and ensure that everyone has enough resources to meet their basic needs. And that's what universal basic income will do. It's an essential part to ending poverty in the United States, but not just for economic reasons. There's also many social benefits to it. First and foremost, universal basic income goes to everyone. So the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezoses also would get $1,300 a month under this plan. And so the big important part of that is that it prevents dividing Americans into worthy and unworthy. It prevents stigma from attaching to universal basic income. Some proposals would allow for an opt-out, to allow people to opt out of UBI. And if you did that, you would create a stigma attached to it, because this is what we have right now with many different government assistance programs, welfare programs that exist to address poverty. Two problems. One is they turn away lots of people because the whole purpose of that bureaucracy that invades people's privacy, that wastes people's time, that creates all these hoops, the whole purpose is to discourage people from jumping through all these hoops, make them really, really prove that they need help in order to get it. And so lots of people who are qualified for these programs don't actually receive any help. But the other half of it is the stigma that can be attached to it. That people would rather let their kids grow up in poverty rather than ask for help. And so universal basic income is important because it goes to every American citizen. And doesn't have to be any stigma attached to being an American citizen and getting your dividend from that goes to all people. And so that's why Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all of these people are also included in this universal basic income program. And as we're going to talk about over the next couple of days, there are taxes involved. And so the people who spend the most are definitely going to be paying far, far more in additional taxes than that $1,300 a month, but they're still going to get it. Everyone, this is the American Union Jobs Program for universal basic income, and everyone gets an American Union job to be a better American for $1,300 a month, that however they see fit. That's what universal basic income is for, is to remind us of our duties as Americans. So besides not dividing Americans, right, because there's so many ways that we are already divided. And you can see this, you've seen this with a lot of government benefits, welfare programs, things like that, where political groups, politicians have tried to pit one against the other, that to say that one is recipients are taking extra money, that they're the cause of high taxes, things like that. And so dividing Americans creates the opportunity for demonizing one side or the other. So the universality is extremely important because it puts all Americans on the same team. We're all in this together. We're promoting the health, happiness, and prosperity of all Americans. Universality is very important. And as a result, knowing that there is a safety floor under every American, that's unlike the safety net that we have now, that's woven out of government bureaucracy and is full of holes, which, as I said, is allowing 37 million Americans to fall through those holes and live in poverty. A safety floor builds increased trust in society because every American knows that our country is looking out for everyone, that it won't let anyone fall below that income level. $1,300 a month is not a princely sum. And if you choose to live in a high cost of living part of the country, that is probably not enough. You're probably going to need to make up the difference. But that is the national poverty line. And that is the place to start. It's by making sure that every American, that every family is above that line. That's how we can end poverty. Now, this also increases prosperity because it's good for businesses. Businesses need customers. And so how do we get businesses more customers? We put spending money into people's hands. And we can see how this works in Alaska. Alaska has a universal basic income program, their oil dividend, that once a year, they send out a check for every Alaskan citizen, usually between $1,000 and $2,000. And when that money goes out, you know how businesses respond? It's not by jacking up prices, it's by putting on sales to get customers in the door. And so if we enact universal basic income, you should expect businesses to compete to get customers in the door to spend that money. People will do other things with it. People will pay down debt. People will do all sorts of stuff with their universal basic income. It is their choice to allow people to decide for themselves how best to improve their lives with an extra $1,300 a month. The government doesn't need to micromanage people's lives. Maybe you own your home, you don't need to pay rent. Maybe you do need to pay rent. Maybe you spend it on groceries. Maybe you pay down student loans. Maybe you fix your car. Only you can decide what the best way to improve your life is. That's why universal basic income as cash is so important to improving health, happiness, and prosperity. So we're going to improve prosperity with universal basic income. Right now, America's productive capacity, our capacity utilization. So if you figure out how much stuff the United States could produce, we're only producing about 80% of what we could. So we have the capacity to produce more, but those businesses don't have customers. And so we can improve prosperity by creating more customers, by putting money into impoverished communities. Because the real problem is that the money is not there. Without money to circulate, the economy just doesn't function properly. And so we'll create a trickle-up economy with universal basic income so that the money all gets introduced at the bottom through everyone's personal U.S. Treasury account, a free digital bank account, and they'll be able to transfer money, they'll be able to spend their money, and it'll bounce back and forth on those bottom rungs of the economic ladder, and it'll work its way up to the top. People are still going to buy stuff on Amazon and so on and so forth. But we'll have a trickle-up economy, a rising tide that will lift all boats and meet our constitutional duty to promote health, happiness, and prosperity. And so these are the interconnected ways that we can live up to that constitutional duty. All right, seeing no questions in the chat, I think that about covers it for this evening. Look, we can do better. We the people, there's a lot of smart people in this country that aren't among the 535 members of Congress. And if we the people can crowdsource 6 million pages on Wikipedia, we can crowdsource a few hundred pages of legislation, and we can upgrade from adversarial democracy to collaborative democracy. That's how we can improve the quality of life for every single American. Even the Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musks and whatever that are going to be paying more in universal basic income than paying more in higher taxes than they are going to receive in universal basic income. So as a straight, on a strictly financial level, they will not be better off. They will be better off by living in a society that addresses these issues, by living in a society that has lower income inequality and wealth inequality. There's a great book called The Spirit Level that looks at a lot of these ways that greater inequality leads to other societal problems. I was talking to a friend about universal basic income a while back, and he was driving around running errands or whatever while we're talking on the phone, and he wasn't necessarily a big fan. But anyways, so somebody came like up to his window and was asking for spare change. He turned them down. He's like, "Isn't that ironic?" No, we can address these problems with universal basic income, so that you would know that every single person, every single American had a minimum of $300 a week to meet their basic needs. Now, again, not a luxurious lifestyle. The poverty line is not supposed to be that, but it will cover, it'll get everybody above the federal poverty line. Of course, some people will still make bad decisions. Again, it's not the government's place to micromanage people's lives and tell them exactly how their money should be spent or what exactly they need by assigning people government cheese or an apartment or clothes or things like that. Universal basic income is the freedom for people to make their own decisions about their lives. And yes, some people will make bad decisions, but the vast majority of people don't. I don't think we've talked about, when we talked about ending the drug war, that what are the reasons that people use drugs? And there was this rat park experiment where they put rats in cages and gave them two choices of water. They could have the straight, regular tap water, or they could have cocaine-laced water. And these rats living in these cages pretty quickly got themselves hooked on the cocaine water. They had miserable lives, and so they were looking for something to liven it up. And then they released these rats into a big giant rat park, like an 8-foot by 8-foot play area with ramps and slides and big piles of sawdust to crawl around in and other rats to interact with, and still having those same two choices of regular water or drug-laced water. And those rats switched back to regular water. They didn't need drugs to make their lives more entertaining, because they had actual healthier, happier lives going on in the rat park. And so when we increase America's health, happiness, and prosperity, more people will make better decisions. Less people will use drugs, and we'll have those happier, healthier lives. So we can do it. We can fix these problems when we come together. And so on Saturday, October 15th, join the general strike against Congress and say, look, enough is enough. It's time for responsible adults to step up and demand that these problems get addressed. And so Congress, this is your chance. You have 10 days to put this on the president's desk, or we can replace you. And when 3.5% of Americans unite around this set of demands, we'll have the leverage to control the balance of power in Washington. So on October 15th, observe a general strike. Don't shop, don't work unless your job is essential, and don't eat. Observe a 24-hour fast for peace. The easiest thing is to go from dinner on the night of the 14th to dinner on the night of the 15th. As part of my own personal commitment, I am fasting for 21 days. Today is day 17. Yeah, 17 sounds right. Yeah. And so I'm still feeling fine. Still feeling good. I'm keeping my electrolytes up. My weight's at 178, and we can do this. This is a fast of moral pressure on Congress. to say it is wrong that we allow 12 million kids, 37 million people to go to sleep in poverty every night. It is wrong that we have 2 million Americans waking up behind bars every single day. And at the same time, we're looking to spend $850 billion on the military industrial complex. By getting our priorities and in order, by getting back to our constitutional duties, we can build a better America. We've got the blueprint for it. Join the general strike on October 15th. That's it for this evening. We'll see everybody tomorrow.